Hello, I'm your host Cheryl Lindsay Roberts, broadcasting from Waycamp TV in Wayland, Massachusetts. I'm delighted to be joined by Treese. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Wynn has been dubbed the accidental poet, and he's recently published a book of poetry. It's titled In the Cloud, Poems for a Technological Age. Wynn will be reading a few of his poems, and at the end we'll put on screen where you can get your very own copy. Welcome, Wynn.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, glad to have you, Mint. Would you mind telling us a little about your non-poetry self?
Certainly. I've been in the software business in various ways for over 35 years now. I've worked at large companies and small companies and universities. These days, I mostly work for lawyers who want to know things about software that's involved in litigation.
That's interesting.
And, of course, writing.
Do you have any involvement in the Wayland community?
Yes. I've been involved with the Wayland Library and the Wayland Schools in various ways. A few years ago, I helped the Wayland Library launch the Girls Who Code program, which is part of a national and international organization devoted to addressing the imbalance in gender in computing by helping girls learn about coding. And I'm also currently a member of
Good for you.
I'm currently a member of the Wayland Library Board of Trustees.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you've been called the accidental poet. You've been dubbed that, I hear. What was your entree into poetry?
The entree there is that I'm working on a book on the history of random numbers, and I'm a member of a local writing group, which is delightful. And at one of the meetings, the leader challenged us to write a piece in poetry that we had previously done in prose. And I did that. That was probably the first time I'd written a poem since elementary school or maybe junior high school. And then in my online writing group, as I was working on random numbers, one of the women in the group challenged me to explain a mathematical concept with a poem. And I did, and then I wrote another one, and over time they accumulated.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Would you mind reading one of your poems for us?
I'd be happy to. This is a poem from the collection called Putting the Hammer Down. Does a tool shape the way we view the world? They say, for the one who has a hammer, everything looks like a nail. For the one who has a computer, is the world merely a problem of data? Perhaps there are times to put down the tools and see the world anew.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Where do you get your ideas for poems?
That's a great question. A lot of the ones in this collection and the ones that didn't make it into the collection are ideas that had been rattling around in my head for a long time. Most of them I thought about writing an article of some kind about. I knew that would require some research. Doing them as poetry let me convey a lot of the feelings and emotions and wondering about a topic without having to get the technical details right or go into all of the background.
Let me ask you this. Do you have a regular writing routine, or do you wait for the muse to strike, or what is your process?
I write just about every day for something, not necessarily what I should be writing at the time. During the time I was writing most of these poems, I was writing a new poem every day.
That's ambitious.
It is. And some days what would happen is it was 10 o'clock at night, and I would say, I have to write something today, so I would have to come up with a poem.
Or you won't sleep tonight.
Write it then.
What does your family think, or what did your family think of this new side of you that emerged?
They were a bit surprised.
Why?
They didn't know I was writing poetry at all.
You wrote it under the cloak of darkness?
I showed them a first draft of what became the ebook version originally of it. So they were very pleased by it. And actually, at least one of the poems was inspired directly by my 3 daughters and their cousins when they were much younger.
Oh, would you read that one, please?
Oh, sure. Let me find it. This is called Let Me Count the Ways. Waiting for the school bus, I watched the children play and began to wonder as they lined up that day, in just how many ways could they arrange themselves for getting on the bus like books upon the shelves. With 2 kids it is easy, for one child must be first, or the other might begin if the order is reversed. It gets a little harder with 3, and we must try. 3 choices for the first, 2 remain, we multiply. For no matter who begins, there's 2 way for the others, and 3 times 2 will count them, even if the 3 are brothers. There's a glimmer of a pattern that's beginning to emerge. Let's try will 4, and then we'll see if our thinking will converge. 4 choices for the first one, and then 3 more remain. So 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 makes 24, it's plain. And now we know the secret, and we multiply it out. All the numbers from the total down to 1, there is no doubt. In math, this kind of problem is called a permutation, and factorial's the fancy name for this simple computation. That day I watched 6 children, and I worked it out no fuss, that there's 720 ways for them to board the bus.
Okay, you started with 3 daughters, 3 nephews. How many years would that take?
That would be 4 years.
4 years.
Boarding the bus a different way every day.
What do you mean a different way? Getting on backwards, forwards, on
No,
a
just
skateboard?
the order in which they line up.
4 years.
4 years for 6
for
children.
6 children. Oh my goodness. Math is not my thing. That's over my head. When I noticed that was a rhyming poem, your first one wasn't. How many different poetic styles do you have?
I don't really have a wide range of styles. Some of them have rhythm and rhyme, like the school bus, and a lot of them are free verse. With the Let Me Count the Ways, I wanted it to be fun because it's also trying to teach a mathematical concept about permutations, how the order in which things happen. So for that, I wanted to do the rhythm and the rhyming to make it more fun. For some of the others, using free verse with some pauses and some reflections in between the stanzas really, I think, conveyed the feeling that I wanted to get across when I was wondering about something or a little concerned about it.
Is it more difficult to write rhyming poems because you have to be so conscious of not only the meter, but the rhyming words? Is that more difficult, more challenging?
It's challenging, but in a different way. Even the free verse poems have a certain flow to them, and the words and the way they sound and how many of them are there has an effect on the emotion that you're trying to create.
Do you get it right the first time always, or do you do a lot of rewriting?
It's somewhere in the middle. It's never right the first time. Most of these did not get a lot of rewriting, and even with the rhyming ones, I would often try to do that as part of the first draft as I was working my way through it.
Mm-hmm. Now that the family's in on the other side of you that they didn't know about, do they ever edit or listen to your poetry before it went into the book, for example?
They didn't edit or give me any notes about the poems.
You were on your own.
I was on my own for that.
They're just good listeners.
Yes.
I also noticed that you self-published your book. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about the process you went through?
Sure. Self-publishing is one of the amazing things that's accessible these days because it's possible both to publish ebooks, and this originally I did as an ebook, but I always wanted to turn it into a print book as well. Ebooks are fairly easy with the software that you can get online, often for free, sometimes at very low cost, to publish on Kindle or Nook or in any of the other ways that you can get ebooks these days. And so for the print edition, it was more complicated, particularly because the typesetting of the poems was a challenge, getting them aligned on the page, choosing the typefaces, making the book design work. I was lucky to have a niece who's a graphic designer, and she did the cover.
I was going to ask you about the cover.
Which I love. She did a fantastic job with that.
What I see, it's let me just hold this up. It's raining numbers from the cloud. It is just such a perfect cover. She really nailed it. Does she do that professionally?
Not book covers, but she does graphic design professionally.
Okay. So how do you sell the books?
I'm selling them online mostly now. You can order them from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or most independent bookstores online.
Are they in the bookstores?
They're not in the bookstores now. That would be delightful, but it hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Are you planning to do any readings?
Yes, I'm hoping to do one at the Wayland Public Library sometime later this year or in early 2023.
Any books on the horizon?
As I mentioned at the beginning, my main book project is a book on the history of random numbers, which is a lot more research and will be a lot thicker than this one.
Just give us a little peek into that.
Random numbers are a fascinating topic. We use random numbers these days for computer security, for weather prediction, for political polling, a lot of diverse areas, and they're essential for the way all of those things work. But they're also connected to the beginnings of the first digital computers, the design of the atomic bomb, and gambling machines in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of history, even though it's happened in mostly the past 100 years.
How far are you from finishing that?
That is a ways off.
Okay, we won't look for it anytime soon. Would you mind reading us one last poem?
Sure. I'd like to read the title poem from the collection called In the Cloud. In the cloud. I look up and see the clouds. Is my data in the cloud? I look up and see the wispy cirrus clouds. Is my data scattered in the wisps? I look up and see the fluffy cumulus clouds. Is my data in the shape of a duck? I look up at the clear blue sky. Is my data gone? They tell me my data is in the cloud. They tell me my data is safe. I look up and I do not know what data is in the cloud. My data in the cloud is somewhere on the net. Where are the clouds? Where on the net? I look up and watch the clouds slowly float away.
Is your data going along with the clouds floating away?
It might be.
It's a little scary. Wynne, I would like to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your lovely poetry. In a moment, we're going to hold the book up and show everyone how they can order a copy. But you're just a wonderful guest today, and I do hope to see your book on the New York Times bestseller list.
Thank you, Cheryl. This has been delightful.